Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Very glad you're able to spend some time with us as we look out the window at a blue sky and what could be a pretty awesome day. It was a wonderful day yesterday, wasn't it? We saw temperatures into the almost double digits, in some areas over the double digits, and we saw lots of melting yesterday. I think it was a couple weeks ago we were chatting here, I think it was with Alistair on our regular Friday segment, and I was getting a little concerned about the amount of snow and the cold temperatures that we had and not being able to get into a certain area, my favorite part of Nova Scotia, at the beginning of April, which of course is the start of sport fishing season here. I think I was putting a little pressure on our meteorologist to try and make that go away. Well, apparently it worked. So the melt is on. We saw lots of melt yesterday. We saw melt on the weekend. We're going to see melting today because we could set records here in Nova Scotia with the weather that's in the forecast. Right? 14 degrees, the guaranteed high today. 14. It was interesting on my drive in this morning. It was foggy, right? We had a little bit of fog in the forecast overnight, and that tends to happen with the change, the significant change with snow on the ground. You understand how fog works. We're a foggy city. But I saw motorcycles on the road this morning. I saw motorcycles yesterday. I saw people. I was at the grocery store yesterday, and we'll talk about groceries in a minute. And there were people in shorts and in shirt sleeves. Some people in T-shirts. I think that we tend to push the seasons here. We try to get out of them as quick as we can or get into the new season as quickly as we can, right? You start to see people wearing their toques and their boots in November or at least in October. And when spring comes around, people are ready to put the sweaters and the hoodies away and get into their summer gear. I think, and this just might be my personal opinion, but I think we're a little bit soon for shorts. But 14 degrees today, I think maybe many people will, and it will be a beautiful day in and around HRM today. The bad news of the forecast, and I don't even think it's that bad news, is beginning tomorrow, I think later in the day, and then into Thursday, we're going to get some showers and some rain, which I think will take care of the majority of the snow if the 14 degrees doesn't, and we'll be left with some snowbanks. I think we'll probably have snowbanks around here for several more weeks. But the spring is certainly upon us, and we do need the water, folks, right? We know that we're in a drought condition in Nova Scotia. I don't know if this melt was too quick, and the water that was on there in the snowpack is run off into the rivers and is gone, or if it's managed to soak through into the ground. I think the ground's probably still frozen, so at least under the snowbanks it would be. But that being said, a little bit of rain, as long as it's not too intense, I think will wash up some of that salt that's out there, and we should be in pretty good shape heading into the weekend. Speaking of the weekend, the talker today, of course, around the water coolers and at the coffee shops and the kitchen tables here in Nova Scotia is the change in gas prices. I predicted it yesterday was going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen as quickly as it did, but it certainly did. The interrupter clause brought into effect at midnight, raising the price for gasoline by 9 cents a liter. We're now somewhere around about $1.62 a liter. That's a significant jump over the last 10 days, right? Diesel was unchanged last night. It continues to sit at $2.16. So we will keep our eyes on what's going on there. I know many of you would be waking up to a little bit of sticker shock this morning. Took a quick look at oil prices before we came on the air here, and they're down significantly this morning after some comments last night from the President of the United States, some contradictory comments if you go through the whole body of his work yesterday. Some of it saying the war's ending soon, some are saying, oh, we're not quite done yet, or we need to do more. So the market's kind of not knowing what to do. They're down about 5%. The WTI, that's West Texas Intermediate crude, is down about 5.6. Brent crude, that's the international benchmark, is down about 6%. Gasoline in New York is down about 3 cents, 3.2%, I should say. Those were percentages. 5.6% is the crude. WTI Brent is down 6.75%, and gas is down by about 3.3%. So the markets are showing oil prices in decline. I would imagine that's going to have an impact on the broader markets in general. Tough couple of days, I would imagine, for your investments, and depending on where you're invested, of course. And I would imagine that that's going to see a little bit of a change here as we move forward. Those diesel prices, that 216.4 is not only going to have an impact on people that need them, or need it, all right, at the pump, but it's also going to have an impact on the cost of goods sold, right? We've danced this dance before, shall I say, where we saw a spike in diesel prices. I'm thinking back to the COVID lockdowns and such, and in the immediate aftermath after that, and then the supply chain issues, and then we saw diesel go up really high, and that's trickled down into the cost of goods, which, of course, the biggest place where we spend a lot of our money on goods is at the grocery store. And I was at the grocery store yesterday. I didn't see, at least on the stuff that I was buying, I didn't see anything that was kind of out of whack, out of the ordinary. But that doesn't mean it's not coming, right? We're going to have a conversation in this hour with Sylvain Charlebois from the analytics lab over there, food analytics lab over there at Dalhousie, to get his thoughts on what we can expect to see. We know that our part of the world has some of the highest food inflation rates in the country. Last check, I think we were somewhere around 9%. I don't think families are ready for anything more. The Liberals here in Nova Scotia are planning to introduce some legislation today on the floor of the provincial legislature with a look at grocery prices, but we know that the wheels of government move slowly, so we'll keep an eye on what's going on with that today as well. The war in Iran continues to drag on. Just watched a briefing at the Pentagon with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, kind of sticking to the talking points. Was pushed a little bit on sort of an end game, on a time frame, which has kind of been the talk since the beginning of this. And the President of the United States, as I mentioned earlier, yesterday kind of, I don't know, what's the word, wishy-washy perhaps on that, maybe just not wanting to answer the question. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth just avoided it, period. Just said, like, we're carrying on. And he did say, and I'm paraphrasing here, that today is going to be the strongest day of strikes that we've seen in the war to date. So hold on to your hats, folks. We're not anywhere near end here. We saw Iran strike back yesterday. They hit targets in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Lebanon expected to see broader expansion there. The Israeli government warning people in other neighborhoods now to get the heck out. We saw strikes in Bahrain. We saw a ship attacked off of the UAE. When we hear from officials in the U.S. about how successful this campaign has been to date, it doesn't appear to be impacting Iran's ability to reach out and touch its neighbors. And some in the government yesterday, I saw a couple of reports on the government suggesting that the President of the United States better be careful, which is, I mean, this is, the propaganda war is certainly underway, right? We're hearing that the Iranian Navy is gone. We're hearing that the Iranian air defenses are gone. We're hearing that their military capability has been severely degraded. Yet, every morning I get up and read stories about successful attacks or missiles or drones being intercepted in Gulf states, American allied Gulf states, right? Bahrain seems to be a target of choice for the Iranians. It's where the Fifth Fleet is. So the war continues, and folks, and I'd like to see this thing end as much as you would, but I don't see it happening, at least not in the short term, as things continue to roll along here. And we'll keep our eyes on anything, of course, that happens during the show today. We'll bring that to you, and hopefully we'll see an end to this thing soon. The Canadian government yesterday had an emergency debate on the floor of the House of Commons about the war in Iran, and the defense minister, too many defense ministers, David McGuinty yesterday saying in pretty plain English that Canada is not going to get involved in this campaign. Conspicuous by his absence yesterday was that of Prime Minister Mark Carney, who skipped the debate. I would imagine is doing laundry because he just got back from his trip to Australia and is planning to head out again. He's going to Norway this time. No, we criticize him a lot for traveling. Is this the right time to be traveling? Or maybe should you kind of hang around here and help as you can help Canadians deal with what's going to be a pretty significant whack to the pocketbook, right? Disappointed to not see the Prime Minister during that debate yesterday. In times of crisis, and I think we can call that what this is, right? I think this is a crisis. Obviously, it's going to become an energy crisis here very shortly if it hasn't already. In times of crisis, Canadians, people, look to their leaders. Right? When something's going on at work, you look to your boss or you look to your boss's boss for guidance and clarity, right? When there's a situation, an emergency situation here in Nova Scotia, we've had many instances of that over the last 5 years or so. We look to our leadership, right? During the COVID campaign, I think the Premier and the medical officer of health were on this radio station almost every day for a period there. So you look to your leaders for clarity. Now, I know it was a non-binding debate last night. The Prime Minister didn't really have to react to anything that was said. It was more of an opportunity to state positions and to be quite honest, it's political theater. But I think Canadians, at least this Canadian, was looking to see what Prime Minister Carney has to say. He's not been completely clear on what his position is on this war, right? We saw him come out to support the strikes in Iran very early on, and then kind of, as I said with our political scientist yesterday, is kind of slowly walking back some of those comments. So the defense minister was pretty clear, I think, last night, saying that Canadians aren't going to get involved militarily in this. But would have been nice to hear that from the Prime Minister, wouldn't it? I guess time will tell if that's going to hit or impact him politically when we get our next set of polling or when we get to the eventuality of an election here in Canada. The energy crisis that is underway is impacting you on a daily basis, right? Your natural gas for your house has gone up. Your heating oil has gone up. Your fuel in your vehicle has gone up. And the prices at the grocery store are going to go up. A conversation with the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois, when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Edition of the show. Dan Alstrand along with you here as we roll you into the rest of the work week. And if any indication by the commute this morning, I thought it was March break, but March break's not until next week, as I understand it. And the roads were pretty light. So I'm wondering if some of you winter-weary Nova Scotians, Haligonians, HRMites, took a look at that forecast and decided it was a good time to take a couple of those vacation days that you've been pushing off, because the drive-in this morning, at least my drive-in this morning, was pretty light on the 102. And looking at that forecast, I kind of putting A and B together here. And if you are off today, lucky you, right? I can tell you that Vanessa and I are certainly looking to get out and enjoy some warm temperatures this afternoon. Here as 14 degrees. We could see like a bunch of records here in Nova Scotia fall today. Had a conversation with somebody in an elevator yesterday who is a long resident of Nova Scotia, I would say. And they told me that for whatever reason, we've forgotten what traditional winters are like. And it's about time that we can remember what traditional springs are like. Sage advice. I can't take it anymore, folks. You know that I go to the grocery store a couple times a week, and when I do, it's always a frustrating experience. And yesterday I went there with all of the news that's happening in the world and the increase in the price for diesel fuel and now for gasoline again here in Nova Scotia overnight, and took a pretty close look around, and at least on the basket of things that I buy, didn't really see any price increases, but I think we all know what's coming, and I think that we're going to see some food inflation here. Inflation right across the board, to be honest, but food inflation certainly is the one that we see very quickly here in our part of the world. Very pleased to welcome back to the show the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois. Hello, Sylvain.
Hey, good morning, then. How are you?
Have we seen it yet? Are we seeing prices go up because of this war in Iran?
Well, guess what? You can blame Trump for once.
Right.
Absolutely. And I've been monitoring what's been happening with commodity prices, obviously oil prices, and I've been comparing what's happening now with 2022 when Ukraine was illegally invaded by Russia. And there are some similarities, of course. Both incidences, both geopolitical incidences have actually impacted world markets, but a little differently. The impact this time is not as acute as in 2022. In terms of ag commodities specifically, if you look at wheat, for example, wheat is a big one because 20% of all calories consumed on Earth is related to wheat. And wheat skyrocketed back in 2022. It is up right now, but about 8%. Coffee's up 8%. Soy's up about 10%. So you can see, I think it's more about market nervousness than anything else. But oil is a big story, along with fertilizers. So urea and sulfur, both ingredients, a lot of it actually goes through the Detroit of Hormuz. And honestly, it's going to be a problem for farmers. If they haven't secured any of their supplies, they're going to have to pay way more, about 30% more. And so just to give your listeners an idea, at 30% for fertilizers, if you're operating a farm of 1,500 acres, you're looking at an extra bill of $25,000 to $30,000. That's a lot of money for a farmer, and they don't control market prices, so they're price takers, so they don't really set prices at all. So that's something they have to eat up that extra cost. That's one problem. But the biggest problem, of course, is oil. I didn't look at prices recently. I think it was at $90 this morning. $90 is about 65% more than in January 7th of this year. And think of it this way, Dan, for every 25% extra on oil, that represents an extra $150 to $200 for a family of four for the entire year in grocery shopping. So at 65%, basically it's double that. So that's an extra $300 to $400 for a family of four. In grocery expenditure. That's basically what's going on right now.
Sylvain, fertilizer, we know that we produce some kinds of fertilizer here in places like Saskatchewan. So could this be a good news story for that segment of the market?
Yeah, if you're a producer, yes. But people need to know that Canada does produce some fertilizers, but not all ingredients required to support our soil science, if you will. You need more than just phosphate. You need more than just potash. You need nitrate. You need sulfur, urea, and so those are things that you need. And that region that's been impacted by the Iranian attacks is certainly going to be pushing fertilizer prices higher. At least what's helping is the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar is going nowhere. It's slightly up, which is good news for sure. But when it comes to oil prices, for all of us, it means that really we're going to have to probably pay more for fruits, vegetables, meat products, dairy, because all of these things need to be transported all over the place, and it requires a lot of energy. But don't forget, Dan, on April 1st, we're increasing the industrial carbon tax from $95 a metric ton to $110 a metric ton. So you're looking at, in a few weeks from now, we may actually be facing a double whammy here.
Yeah, I think the federal government would do well in the face of this to take a real close look at that, and if they're hell bent on putting that carbon tax in, then at least delay it, right? Because this is just beginning, right? We're gonna start to, even if this war ends tomorrow, we're still going to feel the impacts for probably for the rest of the year, if not longer.
Exactly. So when Ukraine happened, so of course oil did skyrocket, but the carbon tax was at $70. Now it's going to be at $110. I've recommended to Parliament several times over the last 5 years to pause the carbon tax on food, on the food supply chain, for exactly that reason. When a big shock like this happens, unlike other sectors, margins are so slim that if you actually have to pay more in taxes, or if your transactional costs do increase because of the carbon tax, well, there's just no room. There's just no room at all. So you have to increase prices, which is why really Canada has the highest food inflation rate among G7 countries, and that's likely not going to change anytime soon.
Sylvain, I think the last time we chatted, we were talking about grocery inflation here in our part of the world, in Atlantic Canada and the Maritimes, and if I remember correctly, we're somewhere up around 9%, and this is kind of a crystal ball question, but given the situation in the Gulf right now and the oil price situation, how much higher can it go?
Actually, we are expecting food inflation to drop in February, March, because there was a surge created by the GST holiday last year, and that's why January was higher, but it was still many percentage points higher than any other G7 countries. But because of oil, we may actually see food inflation go above or stay above 6% for a while. And, that's exactly what we forecast 3 months ago with Canada's food price report. We are expecting food inflation to be at around anywhere between 4 to 6% by the end of this year. And because of the Iranian conflict, I do believe that that's exactly what's going to happen.
No change. I mean, we were forecasting this already, and now I've seen a 20-cent increase in diesel fuel.
Yeah, no, you can feel that markets are really nervous. So, I'm hoping that this will end soon. The president actually did say yesterday that perhaps things will end soon. This morning, Secretary Hexteth basically said that, well, we're going to end this on our own timeline. I'm not even sure what that means, but right. Time is of essence. Really, we should all hope that this will end soon. But I'm not a geopolitical expert here, but my feeling is it's not going to end anytime soon. This is complicated. It's the Middle East, and it's Iran. The regime is deeply embedded into the country. It's not like Venezuela. So that's my concern, and because of that, markets will remain nervous for a very long time, and that's going to impact our pocketbooks at the grocery store.
Sylvain, I appreciate your time, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
That is the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois. Get ready, folks. If it's not already starting, it's going to happen soon. We're going to start paying more. That $24 can of coffee might even be more expensive by the time this war and the increase in diesel prices works its way through into the grocery store. Time for us to take another break here on the program. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the news. On the other side of it, how long are Canadians waiting for medically necessary care, and what's it costing us? A conversation with health policy studies with the Fraser Institute, Nadeem Esmail, when we come back. All right, I want to do a quick survey here. If you're driving in the car or you're listening on the radio at home or at the office, I want you, if you're waiting for a medical procedure, to put up a hand. Now take a look around, class, see how many people are waiting. You're not alone, I will say that. A new study from the Fraser Institute showing that 1.3, almost 1.4 million Canadians are waiting for a medical procedure, and the average wait time is into 13 weeks from the time you see a specialist to treatment. So you're definitely not alone. Let's welcome into the show today to tell us a little bit more about this new survey is the Director of Health Policy Studies over there at the Fraser Institute. That's Nadeem Esmail. Nadeem, how are you?
I'm great, thank you, and thanks for having me on the show.
This shouldn't surprise people when they read these numbers, right? I mean, we've been talking about the length of time it takes to get things done medically in Nova Scotia and by extension across the country for it seems forever.
Forever. We have some of the worst waiting times for healthcare in the developed world. We have waiting times that are at record levels. We're down only slightly from the record last year. When we look at the eastern provinces, we see some of the longest waiting times in the country. And that all costs patients time. Patients are not able to fully engage in their lives while they're waiting for healthcare. So on top of the waiting, on top of the physical deterioration, on top of the physical risks, on top of the potentially poorer outcomes, that time has value. And it's costing Canadians 4.2 to, if we count evenings and weekends, $12.9 billion last year.
So tell me a little bit about the methodology on this, Nadeem. How did you come up with these numbers?
We took the number of patients waiting, the amount of time they wait, the average weekly wage or the average hourly wage, and we combined those three. And then we used the Statistics Canada finding that says about 13.2% of Canadians experienced difficulties while they were waiting for healthcare. And so we use that as sort of an approximation for the percentage of time that Canadians are waiting for healthcare that they're not able to engage fully in their lives, recognizing that some Canadians will be fine waiting, that some of that time is unimpacted, but also for everybody that there is a portion of that wait time where they can't work completely in their normal capacity, where they may be losing hours at work, where they may not be able to participate in their lives and leisure activities with their children or grandchildren, with their friends, and that this time has value. And when we combine all of those together, we find that the cost to Canadians waiting for healthcare is about $4.2 billion during the working week. Or again, if we include evenings and weekends, but not 8 hours of sleep a night, $12.9 billion.
We put a value on sleep?
Not on sleep, but on evenings and weekends, because
right.
Again, when you're not able to fully engage in your life, that time is lost, and that time has value.
Is the biggest contributor to that dollar figure is that lost time, productivity, time at work?
It's $4.2 billion when we look at the average weekly wage. And there's going to be any number of combinations of things happening with Canadians who are losing time at work. There will be many in the trades or many working hourly jobs where they simply cannot work because of their medical condition. And that's going to cost them right on the family budget line. But there are also seniors waiting for healthcare who can't see their grandchildren and play with them on the floor the way they may wish to, or who can't enjoy the time that they're supposed to be enjoying in retirement because of a medical condition that's gone untreated, and for children who can't learn properly at school and fully engage in their education because they're waiting for an untreated medical condition. Waiting affects all groups across society, and that lost time has value to them, particularly for children and seniors where they're seeing parts of their lives eroded where they might have been able to fully enjoy it otherwise or grow from it.
The national average of the amount that this costs is just over $3,000. Here in Atlantic Canada, we're well above that mark. Nova Scotia coming in at $3,300.
And it would be higher, in fact, in Nova Scotia, but Nova Scotia also has lower wages than some of the other provinces, which
right.
means the number calculates a little bit lower. But the wait times experience in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland is longer than it is in the other provinces. And so those numbers do add up very quickly and have a real impact on individuals waiting for health care.
Right, and not to mention the economic impact, but just the some of these procedures, people are dealing with chronic pain waiting for these things.
Absolutely. And we haven't calculated the economic impact, which again could scale this up further. We haven't counted the cost of waiting to see the specialist in the first place, which is more than half the total wait time. We haven't counted the cost for waiting to see diagnostic services to try to get into family practice. This is a clear underestimate of the burden of waiting on the average Canadian who just wants health care that they've already paid for through their taxes.
Now, we're talking, this study looks at from the time that you've seen a specialist to the time that you get treatment, right? That's sort of the benchmark here. But I would imagine, and just speaking from a Nova Scotia perspective, given that almost half the population, more than half the population, don't have access to a GP, they don't have a family doctor, that if we added that into the list, that this number would be even bigger.
Even bigger, if we added the wait to try and get to that general practitioner, the wait to see a specialist, which again is more than half the total wait time. In Nova Scotia, it's 30.7 weeks to get to see the specialist in the first place, and then 18.3 weeks to actually receive treatment after. So the majority of waiting is not being counted into this for data-related reasons, but it's clearly an underestimate of how much this is costing. So we have Nova Scotians paying for one of the most expensive universal access healthcare systems in the developed world, and then paying with their time for some of the longest waiting lists for access to healthcare in the developed world.
Nadeem, do we have stats on this from years previous? And the reason I ask that question is when I sit in front of politicians here, or the Premier joins the show and we talk about healthcare, he says that we're making strides in healthcare. Is it getting better?
It hasn't gotten better over the long run. It has gotten a little bit better since last year. Wait times have dropped slightly from the peak that we reached last year, which has had a beneficial consequence for the personal cost of waiting. But again, we've seen growth in other areas. So overall, probably not a completely better impact. But if we look back over the longer term, the cost of waiting per patient for healthcare in Canada is up 58% since 2004, while wait times have more than doubled. So it's gotten much worse over time, and certainly this is a healthcare system that ranks at the very top internationally in terms of health expenditures and ranks at the very bottom when it comes to access to healthcare. So there's really no good news story here.
Is it based on a lack of physicians, or is it a combination of that and other factors?
It's a combination of that and other factors. Certainly the lack of physicians plays an important role. We have some of the lowest numbers of physicians per population in the developed world because government planning has brought us here, and we simply have not trained enough Canadians to be physicians, while turning away perfectly qualified and capable Canadian kids at the school doors because we didn't have training slots for them. So certainly a very important physician story here, but also investment in medical technologies like CT and MRI, investment in hospital beds, having the capacity of the healthcare system, the sort of capacity one would expect given we have some of the highest levels of spending in the developed world.
Nadeem, the report is called The Private Cost of Public Queues for Medically Necessary Care. It's available on the Fraser Institute website. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Nadeem Esmail is from the Fraser Institute. He is the director of the healthcare area of that institution. This number shouldn't surprise us, right? But what is surprising is the gap between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Nova Scotia, the average value of time lost during the work week in 2025 for patients waiting for medically necessary treatment is $3,317. Across the border in New Brunswick, that number rises to $4,864. If you remember, not that long ago, we were losing doctors here in Nova Scotia to New Brunswick because they were paying their physicians more. The working conditions were better. But yet, study shows that New Brunswickers might be even waiting longer to get these medically necessary treatments done. I don't know what the solution is. I don't think many people in the medical community know what the solution is. We can't just create doctors with a magic wand, but these numbers are staggering. The amount of money that's getting lost because of the wait for these things is staggering. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, a continued look at the fallout from the blizzard budget from the provincial government. Families slamming budget cuts for harming the most vulnerable. A conversation with Brittany Aucoin after the break. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, and the fallout from the blizzard budget of a couple of weeks ago continues as different organizations, groups, and communities start to dig into the numbers and sharpen their pencils and try and figure out what these cuts mean and what it will mean to their futures. And I do know that the Premier, Tim Houston, is scheduled to make some kind of announcement related to the budget happening right now at the provincial legislature. I don't know what it is. We get very cryptic information from the Premier's office these days about what he's announcing, particularly when it comes to this budget. But we'll keep our eye on what's happening at Province House, and once we figure out what this announcement is today, we will certainly bring that to you. Lots of community groups, lots of organizations, and now families are starting to realize the impact of these cuts that the Premier and the Finance Minister announced just a couple of weeks ago, and we're very pleased to welcome to the show Brittany Aucoin to tell us a little bit about how this is going to impact her family and her family's life. Brittany, appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I guess let's tell for the listeners what your situation is and what was cut that is impacting your family and your life.
For sure. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory on myself, I guess. I am 31 years old. I'm a hairstylist full time, and in December of 2024, I lost my dad to cancer. I had previously lost my mom to cancer in 2007. So with my dad's passing, I stepped up to become a full-time caretaker to my sister because obviously I love her and want her to be at home with me if she can be. But, that's not something that I can really handle on my own. I need the support from community and the services that we rely on. So I started looking for a day program for my sister so that I would be able to get back to work and back to kind of just my regular life, whatever that means for me now.
Right.
And I found Club Inclusion, which has been an incredible saving grace for us. It's honestly, my sister is the most well-off and independent and happy that I've ever seen her, which is crazy considering everything that we've been through in the last year. So, yeah, I mean, it's a place that I'm able to send her so I can go back to work so that I can have a moment to myself. And I found out last Wednesday that 100% of the funding to Club Inclusion would be cut. As you said, right now there is an announcement being made, and I'm hoping that we'll be told that everything is reversed. But even if we're told that, that doesn't remove the stress that all of the caretakers and parents have had to go through for the last week and all of the hoops we've had to jump through, For
sure. So when you found, is the program being completely eliminated?
No, so the programs themselves are doing everything in their power to remain in place for us. The staff are doing everything that they can. It's just the government funding. So now if I want to attend that program, the money has to come from elsewhere. So our cost went from $500 a month to $2,400 a month as of April 1st if these budget cuts are not reversed, I suppose.
All right, Brittany. So, bottom line, if that program ends, then what does your family situation look like?
Well, for me, it means I can't work, and I mean I'm the only person in our household providing any kind of income to pay our rent and keep food on the table. And I mean, it means everything to my sister. You know what I mean? Actually, as we're talking right now, I'm having messages rolling through of people telling me that he is saying the funding will be restored.
Yeah, in fact, Brittany, I just got the release myself, and I'll share the good news with you. How's that?
Okay. We love to hear that.
For sure. The province says it's going to reinstate $53.6 million in grants and funding to support people with disabilities, seniors, and education initiatives. The Premier says Nova Scotians have spoken, we've listened, and we're reinstating supports to disabilities programming, seniors programming, and African Nova Scotian and Indigenous students. These are grants that help people meet their basic daily needs. He went on to say, I wish we could do more. We will continue to look for opportunities to support all Nova Scotians as our fiscal picture improves. The government is reinstating $21.4 million in grants to support seniors and people with disabilities and to help African Nova Scotians and Indigenous people access education. Another $10 million goes back to organizations that support these groups. It's also reestablishing $22.2 million in funding to community programs that help support seniors, disability groups, and African Nova Scotian and Indigenous communities. Obviously, Brittany, the devil in the details, but this has to be good news for you and your family.
For sure. It's great news. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest fact of the matter is, why are we even in this situation? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, why are you and I even sitting here and having this conversation?
Yes.
It's great that they say that they hear people and they've listened, but I shouldn't have had to spend the last week bending over backwards advocating for my sister to have the basic necessities that she needs.
Right.
You know, they've said from the jump that, well, they haven't even. They've said since people have started pestering them, asking what the hell is going on. Nobody has actually made a statement before that, it was going to be the remedy and these funds were going to be to the individuals. And I think the whole fact of the matter was that you cannot cut these funds from us before you give us the individual funds. And so I am overjoyed, and I'm so glad to hear that our voices have been heard, but just do better. It's extremely frustrating that we even had to use our voices for you to register that these are not where the budget cuts can be happening right now.
Right. And again, as I mentioned, Brittany, I don't have the sort of breakdown, and I would imagine there's always devil in the details, right?
Yeah.
But I hope this helps out your sister, and I hope this helps out your situation. And once we get to the bottom of this, maybe we'll reach out again and see how it's looking for your family.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. And again, I do really appreciate you giving me a platform to have my voice heard, because obviously it is very important. And I think that that's a very important message because, I think a lot of us think that there is nothing that we can do. But if everyone who thinks they can't do something does something and speaks up, obviously it can get us places.
Absolutely. Brittany, I appreciate your time and all the best.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
That is Brittany Aucoin, who, as we were on the air, breaking news, and in case you didn't catch it all, the province, anyway, I'll read the release first. I'll save my comments for the open hour. The province is to reinstate $53.6 million in grants and funding to support people with disabilities, seniors, and education initiatives. $21.4 million in grants to support seniors and people with disabilities, like Brittany's sister, and to help African Nova Scotians and Indigenous people access education. Another $10 million going back to organizations that support the groups. Also reestablishing $22.2 million in funding to community programs that support those groups, seniors and disability groups, African Nova Scotian and Indigenous communities. The deficit now, folks, with that money added, $53.6 million, has been added back to the budget. And that moves the deficit from the budget that we had a couple of weeks ago. I think it was $19 billion. It's now $1.24 billion before contingency. So breaking news here on the Todd Veinotte Show today. Obviously, these things are new, and it will start to filter into the community. There is a protest that was planned for the front of Province House at noon today with a couple of these groups that are going to benefit from this reinstatement of funding. And I'm going to open up the telephone lines at 11 o'clock, of course, as we do every day here on the program. For you, this is certainly testament to the power of the people. Can I say that? That stood up and raised their voices. It's also very on message for this Houston government. They tend to do things and then wait to see what the blowback is, right? There's several examples. The Auditor General comes to mind, right? The lack of or restricting access to journalists after question period comes to mind. It seems that the louder we raise our voices on some of the issues, the more attention that we get from the province. We're going to open the telephone lines, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to try and put some context on this. It's obviously very new, but I'm interested in your thoughts on it. And the issues of the day. Regular rules apply. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We are back after the update. Welcome back. It's time for the open hour, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. If you just heard in the newscast, a bit of a reversal, a bit of a change of heart, so to speak, for the Premier of Nova Scotia. The province is reinstating $53.6 million in grants and funding supports for people with disabilities, seniors, and education initiatives. $21.5 million to support seniors and people with disabilities and to help African Nova Scotians and Indigenous people access educational opportunities. 10 going back to organizations $10 million going back to support organizations that support these groups, $22.2 million going to community programs. That was a big focus of some of the pushback on the budget that supports seniors and disability groups and African Nova Scotians along with the Indigenous communities. The deficit increasing because of this $53.6 million, up now to $1.24 billion. I know this is pretty new, folks. I'm interested in your thoughts on it. You often hear the saying, you can't fight City Hall, right? And you have the politicians don't listen to their constituents. I can recall several instances where people say it's always the same, Dan. They promise us a bunch of things, and then when they get into office, they never follow through, and we never hear from them. Now, I'm not suggesting that it happens all the time. I'm not suggesting that it happens enough. But we've seen this government, this premier, backtrack on some would consider it to be the political term flip-flop on some of these more contentious issues this government, or this form of government has seen. Now, is it a tactic? Some would suggest that the premier will put up a bunch of things that he knows will cause some controversy and then kind of judge or feel what that controversy is and how strong it is and then adjust after. I think the term is trial balloon. But I think we should take the win. I mean, we've been pushing back. And obviously there are still some organizations that weren't included in this change of heart and are still going to see their funding cut. There's been no change to the cuts that were announced in the public service and the extended public service. Still 12 museums that are closing. But this group, this sector, should celebrate the wins, I think. Obviously, the devil's in the details. Obviously, more to come once we dig into the numbers and where the money's going, and if all the funding has been restored, if it's partially restored, what that means. There's a lot to come with this announcement. But I think in today's world, we have to celebrate the wins. And the people still have a voice. At least this shows that group of people were able to affect change. And I think that's a win. Earlier in the show, if you were listening to the program, I criticized the Prime Minister for taking the night off and not joining the debate on the war in Iran on the floor of the House of Commons yesterday. I think I made the comment that he was probably doing his laundry because he's just back from a trip in Australia and then on his way now to Norway. Some of you took quite offense to that. Mike writes, what would you rather have? My leader is traveling to me, my country money. Their leader is causing wars to make himself money while he's golfing. Do you honestly feel more comfortable if Carney was sitting in his office today, like for real? You're starting to sound like Fox News, Dan. Really? That's, I think, the first time somebody said that I sound like Fox News. Look, I get he has to travel, right? I get that, these visits and this cobbling together the middle powers that he's talking about may pay benefits in the future, right? But tell you what, folks, you're going to feel this impact of this war if you're not already. Well, you are at the gas pump, and you're going to feel it at the grocery store for months and months and months and months to come. If you listen to Sylvain Charlebois earlier in the program saying that not only is this oil that's being backed up in the Persian Gulf at the Strait of Hormuz, but this is having an impact on the world's fertilizer supplies. And yeah, Canada makes some fertilizer, but not all of the fertilizers that farmers need. And that has long-ranging impact, right? A visit to Norway may be beneficial to the Canadian economy in the future. But boy, wouldn't it be nice to have the Prime Minister take part in that debate last night to hear from our leader instead of from the Defense Minister? And wouldn't it be nice for him to face some of the scrutiny for the comments that he's made instead of with them. And the media that are traveling with the Prime Minister have a tough job to do. I get it. But let's face some questions about right exactly are you at with this, Prime Minister Carney? You said one thing off the hop, you backed it back, you backed it off. Now you're like, where are we? The situation on the ground in Iran's changing on by the minute. The situation in the markets is changing by the minute. And now you're heading off to Norway. I don't know. Am I off base? Am I Fox News? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. To the phones, we say hello to Tim. Tim, how are you?
Morning, Ted. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, listen, first and foremost, great work. Nice to see Mr. Houston reversing the role, and I'm sure you and your station had a large contribution to that, and it's nice to see that the people are somewhat still heard and their constituents were reaching out to their MLAs. But that's not why I'm calling. Hopefully keep up the good work, and we'll see where he finds the additional money to pay the in excess of $1.2 billion. But
right.
Calling in regards to the Water Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And the alleged breach in privacy and, again, customers' information. I don't know what, if anything, Nova Scotia or the Water Commission learned from the Nova Scotia Power breach. But I'm concerned that, I'm just looking at the Water Commission's website. I think it's the straight from the source. There's certainly 3, if not more, councillors on that board.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a reasonable question to ask. What or when did they know about the information, the accountability or responsibility? I understand the in-camera meetings and what they're limited to say or not say, but as a councillor, they're also obligated to their constituents. And if that information was known whenever, what did they do to take the necessary precautions to protect the constituents?
Yeah, all valid questions, all questions I have, Tim, and Vanessa has reached out to Halifax Water to have somebody come on to address those concerns, and we have yet to confirm an interview, I will say. Well,
again, just going back to straight from the source, which is the Water Commission's website, the March 27th minutes are yet to be posted, but I'd be interested, as I'm sure many would, about the what that information is included in the minutes, because again, it's our personal information, and I'm not sure what precautions, if any, the Water Commission took.
All valid questions, Tim, and hopefully we'll get them answered for you.
All right. You enjoy your day.
Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break. All right, welcome back. Open Hour continues. The lines are open, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Mark Carney skipping debates on the floor of the House of Commons last night on the war in Iran and not taking part, and hearing that he's just back from Australia, now planning to travel to Norway as he goes about building his coalition of the middle powers, I think is probably the way to describe that. I think the optics are bad. I think that, as I've said before, that Canadians want to hear from their leader. I didn't vote for David McGuinty. Did you? The defense minister was the one that made the points last night that Canada is not going to get involved militarily in the war in Iran. Now, obviously, things can change with us being part of NATO and Turkey being part of NATO and Article 5, and the rabbit hole continues when it comes to this thing. But I wanted to hear that from the Prime Minister. I didn't want to hear that from the Defense Minister yesterday. I think that Mark Carney should be held to account for some of his comments. If that's on the floor of the House of Commons during question period, or if that's in front of the nation's media in the media theater, or if that's to average, ordinary Canadian on the street corner, right? I think we deserve to hear when situations like this are unfolding from our leadership. Some of you disagree with me. Gino writes, we elected him to do a job. Stop telling him how he should do it. Give him some space. or apply for the job, says Gino. Nope, not applying to be the Prime Minister of Canada. That is not anything that's on my radar, but I think we as Canadians should be telling him how to do his job, right? We're the ones who give him the job. We're his boss. Your boss tell you how to do your job, Gino? Mine certainly does. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Dave.
Yes, hello, Dan. I hear you're a fan of Fox.
Apparently.
Isn't that silly? I hope you don't take this stuff, lose sleep at night.
No,
it's
goodness no, I don't.
So ridiculous. It's just a jab, and when I hear that kind of thing, these people are very angry and upset, and they're just, reaching out and trying to hurt people, I think. And that's the way we kind of all have evolved, unfortunately. You're either this side or that side. But you had Sylvain Charlebois on this morning, and we're at the 9%, right? I think at the bottom of the G7 as far as food inflation, by far the worst of the G7. We actually, I'm looking at our fuel prices that are going to go up. When it comes to fuel, we're taxed in Nova Scotia 40% on taxes on a liter of gas. And out in BC, it's upwards of 80%. So that goes to environmental stuff and what have you, right? So I'm just looking at some of the things that Mark Carney should be dealing with, not traveling around, gallivanting. I call it gallivanting around, just like his predecessor, right? They like to get around, globetrotters, and hopefully he is getting some things done. But boy, oh boy, I think we have a crisis here. Look at your medical. You had somebody talking on this morning. I forgot the name, Dan. Good guess this morning.
Thank you.
Sadly, it's depressing in a way. But when people are waiting, up to 13 months, or was it even worse than that?
It depends where you live, but yes, that's the average.
But that's another crisis we have here. Not just food inflation. We have a crisis in our health care. And the way the man described the situation, it's sad. It really is. It's in a country that should be flourishing, in my opinion. We have everything here: natural resources. We're gift wrapped, but poorly run. And at the moment, and then Mark Carney, do you know where he stands on the war that's going on now? And I know it's political, like everything. We see that all the time.
Right.
And he had a chat with Trump, I gather, as well. So I don't know where he stands, because I was actually quite happy that he was sort of supporting it, not boots on the ground or militarily, but he approved that Iran should not get the nuclear war tip missiles that they were, progressing toward or determined to get. And I think that may be annihilated now. But I think there's so many important things in this country. He needs to show his face and get his arse back, if you don't mind me saying, and start talking to the people, because we are strapped. We're afraid. We're living in fear. A lot of people. It's a day-to-day thing here, and we just need some really good morale from our Prime Minister, and traveling around the globe, like I said, to Norway and what have you. I don't get that myself, but anyways, that's my opinion. Dan, thanks for taking my call, sir.
Appreciate it, Dave. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number, folks. Lines are wide open if you want to get into the conversation. It's obviously the open hour and regular rules apply. We don't have to talk about the Prime Minister or the change of direction, the change of heart from the Premier on some of the cuts that were made in the budget. You can talk about whatever it is on your mind. Did you fill up your tank today? Goodness, right? And I don't think it's going to get any better. Rob writes, and to something I said, he said, wow, we're falling for it again. He says we should take the win with regards to the change of heart of the Premier. Where's the win, he writes. Houston spent far too much of our money on things like a free bridge and highway tolls and free parking. And then he threatens us with brutal cuts and then says, okay, I won't brutalize you. You're welcome. We now have an even more immense deficit than before. There is no win. And that comes to us from Rob. This one comes to from Lucas. And it reads, hey, good morning, Dan. I hear what you're saying when it comes to Carney not being there yesterday at the debate and seemingly flip-flopping his position on the illegal strikes in Iran and how that may seem. I personally believe that Carney's trying to play his cards right with Trump in regards to our own war. That's the trade war with America. I assume he has not been overtly outspoken on the war because of the ongoing negotiations with the U.S. regarding Kuzma. When Carney spoke on Article 5, I believe he may actually be alluding to backing Turkey in the event that they're hit indirectly. Remember, with something as large as this was meant to be seen globally and not just by Canadian eyes. Without stating his actual intentions and seemingly being on America's side, it appeals to Trump and how he's whined in the past about no one coming to America's aid. If it seems like we're there for America, maybe Trump throws us a bone and the negotiations go a bit more smoothly. Just my thoughts on the matter. Then he says, and I also didn't think you were overtly critical of Carney. You raised valid points, but to each his own. Have a good day. And that one comes to us from Lucas. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It seems that everybody's sitting in front of keys today instead of having that telephone in their hand, getting lots of emails with regards to the comments I made about the Prime Minister and the thoughts I had on the Premier's new position with his budget. Telephones are open if you want to join the conversation. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I mentioned that I didn't vote for David McGuinty as the defense minister. Gerald writes, and technically correctly writes, Dan, you didn't vote for the PM either. We've had this discussion several times when it comes to federal governments, right? I'm going to suggest the majority of people that vote in a federal election are voting for the party that the person in their riding is representing and not the person that is their MP. I can't tell you the number of times people have told me that they don't even know who their MP is. But certainly have lots of comments to say about the Prime Minister and the governing party of Canada, right? Which is the Liberal Party these days, it seems. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Mark writes, I think with a smile on his face, that Mark Carney seems to be like more is Where's Waldo these days. Yeah, it's wild. The Prime Minister is certainly racking up the frequent flyer miles, right? But, to be fair, and we had this discussion yesterday, that the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, also was traveling last week in what is out of the ordinary for the leader of the opposition to travel he was in London. I don't know if he went anywhere else, but I saw pictures of him in some media coverage of his trip to London. So he's traveling as well, which is completely out of ordinary. And I wonder what can be accomplished by that. Now, the Conservative Party, as I understand it, we're paying for that flight and for those accommodations, and that's party money, and he can do what he wants with party money, right? If it was taxpayers' money, though, that would be certainly a different discussion. Let's go back to the phones and say hello to Ken. Ken, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
I just laugh when people said you sound like Fox News. That's hilarious because you're pointing out the obvious that the Prime Minister is not doing his job, especially not going in and debating over the war topics now. But oh no, sorry, packing my bag again. I'm busy. I'm going to Norway again. It's like, it's crazy. He's not going there. It would be okay if he was there and he was going, well, I'm doing this for the people. I'm doing that for the people, right? He's doing it for big business. That's all he's doing. And, well, do I even need to say Brookfield? It's crazy. But then Poilievre goes over there and he's did 2 videos over in Germany saying why we should be, sending all this oil and gas or whatever to Germany and the numbers and all that stuff on his own party's dime, not on our dime, right? $145,000 the last trip for Carney and his catering. Well, what did the last trip, cost us? I wonder. And he's doing absolutely nothing. He's got nothing to put in, right? He's not a leader. He's a businessman. He's looking after his own interests. That's it.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I don't think I said that I don't think he's doing anything or accomplishing anything, right? We've seen Mr. Carney's star rise on the international stage. We've seen this so-called coalition of the middle powers that Mr. Carney appears to be at the front of. And I don't doubt that some of these relationships are going to bear fruit in the future. But there's a crisis in Canada right now. What are we going to do about oil prices? What are we going to do about gas prices? Should we, if we've seen gas increase as much as we have across the country, should we be bringing in an industrial carbon tax in April? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the news. Okay, welcome back. It's the open hour, 902-405-6001, 877-801-8255. Regular rules apply. You can bring your opinions or your thoughts on the issues of the day to the show. We'll certainly have a listen. 902-405-6001, 877-801-8255. Let's go back to the phones and we say hello to Jeff. Jeff, how are you?
Very good. Yourself?
I am well. What's on your mind?
You can correct me if I get my facts wrong, but a certain amount of your HRM taxes go to environment, our future environment projects.
Sorry, I missed what you said.
A certain amount of the HRM budget goes to
Yes.
Environmental projects in the future.
You are correct. I think it's the number. I think it's 3%.
And also, somewhere along the line, they talked about taking away the students' free bus pass.
Well, that was the province that did that, but yes, you're correct.
Oh, okay. So it was the HRM.
Well, it's a joint thing, right? The province and the city work on it, and with the province pulling the funding on it, the city can't afford to support the program.
Okay. Well, what I was thinking was that it's going to create more traffic, which is an environment problem as well as other problems. But so why couldn't they take some of that 3% and keep that program in effect, or maybe even expand it and try to get more people back in the buses as opposed to pushing them into cars?
It certainly seems like it would fit the mold of Halifax, which is the environmental program, right?
Exactly. The other thing, I'm not sure if you did a program on this or not, because I don't listen all the time, but the changes to the Lands and Forests, or DNR, that's coming. Have you talked to anybody to see what exactly? I know you're an avid fisherman and stuff, so what that actually does? If we're not going to see anybody enforcement out there, or
we have certainly reached out and to the province and have yet to hear back on that one, Jeff. But I'm as curious as you are. If we're cutting the wildlife division, then I will say, and many of you are going to disagree with me on this one, but I don't think there's near enough conservation officers out there. I never see them. So if we're cutting the ones that are already there, or we're having them go out and take part in different programs, then are people going to go in the woods unchecked?
Well, and the same as we do. I do a lot of off-roading, the off-highway vehicle and stuff, and right. I'm the same as you. I don't think we have enough enforcement on that either. And from that end, and if we're going to see less of them, that's not a good thing in my books. I
absolutely agree. We'll dig into that for you, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, bud.
Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Tom writes, normally I would agree 100% with what you said about our Prime Minister's time out of the country. Lord knows Justin put plenty of wasted air miles on. But in this case, I'm going to cut the PM some slack. Why? Because these aren't normal times by any stretch. The Prime Minister is, and he put in brackets, I hope, traveling around the world to hopefully make deals with other countries to supply us with what we're now getting from the United States as well. I assume he's discussing with the appropriate countries what the new NATO will look like without the U.S. leading it. And that comes to us from Tom. Appreciate it, Tom. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let us say hello to John. John, how are you?
I'm all right, Dan. I just wanted to, on the Carney thing there, whether anyone supports them or doesn't support them, a guy by the name of Mario Zelaya, he did this website up, and you need to check this out. And anybody that likes him or doesn't like Carney, it's called carneywatch.ca. It shows everything he did while he was Trudeau's advisor, everything he's up to now with the spending and this and that. It cites all the sources, like it's not conspiracy stuff or anything. Dan, really have a look at this site. I actually sent it to Todd, believe it or not. And just really have a look at that. It's an eye opener, no matter what side of the political fence anyone's on. But basically, I showed it to a few of the elbows up boomers, and they basically had a meltdown after they read the website. So I'm just encouraging anyone out there to go carneywatch.ca and check it out.
Appreciate it, John.
All right. Bye.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I'm not going to suggest that I am opposed or am disappointed in everything that the Prime Minister has done. I just want to make sure that you all understand that. But in this particular instance, I mean, what harm would it have done for Mark Carney, who is, I understand it was in Ottawa? If he wasn't, I stand to be corrected. But I believe he's in Ottawa. Why skip that debate last night? Good leaders to face the tough questions, right? And stand up and face the music when they make a call. And it just felt to me that an opportunity was missed there for the Prime Minister to explain his position, explain the country's position, and to sort of give us an idea where we're going next. I just think it was an opportunity missed. Didn't want to hear that from the Defense Minister. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Sean.
Hey, what's going on, Thunder Dan? How you doing?
I'm all right. What's going on with you?
Well, listen, your last couple, well, not your conspiracy caller, but the Tom's email basically just said what I was calling about. Your caller before the break with his, questioning what does Carney do? He does nothing. He's a world traveler. Yeah, but we're taking everything for granted like we have in the last gazillion years of trade with the United States. It's not there anymore. It's not a affordable option for us. So, yes, you know what? The new 2026, our Prime Minister will be a world traveler. He's drumming up business that we've never had business like before. I mean, I don't know if you disagree with that part, but and the caller's last comment was, we have a businessman as a leader, we have a businessman as Prime Minister, he's not a leader. Well, isn't that exactly what's going on down south? He's a businessman, far from a leader,
and appears to be into the job to improve his standing in the business community and not much else, right?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. We got to cut some slack. Business is not as usual. There was an old line on the show The Office. When Michael Scott thought of his business as usual, it's not. Things got to change. Right, and it's always the anybody but liberal crowd, right? I consider myself a conservative liberal. I know it makes no sense, but I don't know. We got to open our eyes and stop. We just got to be open to a little bit of change.
Fair point, Sean. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I think I said it off the top of the show today. And maybe some of you weren't tuned in by that point, but I think that these trips, these trips to places like Australia and all the other excursions that the Prime Minister's been on recently may bear fruit in the future, right? But there's a crisis in Canada right now, and I get that there's war on trade and that CUSMA's coming, and everybody's got to use kid gloves when we're dealing with the stuff south of the border. But there is a growing crisis happening in our country right now, today. And I think that Canadians deserve to have their leadership explain what's happening and explain what their plan is. And I think that the only way Canadians will understand that completely is if it comes from the Prime Minister's mouth itself, right? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen 6 hours from now with this war escalating. It's 11 days in, and there's no sign of it happening. But the energy crisis is here. Grocery prices are going up. Gasoline prices are going up. Diesel prices are going up. What's the government's plan to deal with it? Those are the questions we need answered. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. A few minutes left here in the open hour. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. To the phones to say hello to Barry. Barry, how are you?
Not too bad. It's not too good what's going on over there right now, and actually, I don't think Carney. Well, he should have been back for the vote, but I don't think there's anything we can do about high prices until this ends.
Right. And
that's a sad state of affairs. I mean, when are American people going to start believing? Remember in Kuwait they were in bayoneting babies? Guess what? It wasn't true. We still haven't found the weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
Last night he said they were going to attack us within the week, which was kind of hilarious. Now, this moron got us into a war. He didn't have enough missiles over there. They're running out. They're dreadfully low. And the Iranians are keeping their big stuff back to really do damage. And by the way, the support, they took it off the air, but I've seen in Israel there's a lot of people that didn't want this war. But they never get mentioned.
Right.
And it's sad. And by the way, Japan did Pearl Harbor. They did declare war first, but we weren't told that until about 20 years ago. We attacked Iran while we're negotiating. Isn't that the same thing? Where's the difference? When you attack a country without declaring war first. They're evil for doing it, and the States are heroes for it. And by the way, the thing that's really scary is, and they've had about 500 complaints, they're given a piece of paper which the separation between church and state, that this is a holy war. And that shouldn't be given to soldiers going in. This is not a holy war. This is a war. And the States is supposed to be a country with a separation of church and state, and that should not have been given to soldiers. And a lot of them are very annoyed about it. I mean, it's insanity. When you can't go to war without telling the truth to the people.
All right, Barry, appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And done some digging, and I don't think that the Americans have laid out an official declaration of war since the end of the Second World War in 1945. I think the last one was probably, I'm sure there were numbers of declarations throughout that conflict, but after Pearl Harbor in 42, right? So it's not, this is not out of the ordinary for an American president to launch a campaign. Now, there have been different instances where Congress has given authorization, bipartisan authorization, and I believe Afghanistan was one of those situations in the fallout from 9/11. But it's not out of the ordinary for an American president to launch a military campaign, or in this case a war, without declaring it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the email bag here. This one comes to us from Mark, and it reads, "Yes, Dan, I totally agree with you. Where is our Prime Minister when we have all the issues you just laid out? He needs to be here to answer questions and hopefully have some answers." And that one comes to us from Mark. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. In case you missed it, folks, the big news of the day, at least provincially, is that the Premier has made a change and has reinstated, and what is it, $53.6 million in grants and funding to support people with disabilities, seniors, and education initiatives. We got maybe a hint of what was coming yesterday when there was some questions asked of the minister responsible, and said that some of the families were going to keep their funding. That was kind of contrary to the messaging that we'd heard from the Premier and the Progressive Conservatives in the wake of the Blizzard budget. But now the Premier today, about an hour ago, making it official that $21.4 million is going back to support seniors and people with disabilities, to help African Nova Scotians and Indigenous people access education opportunities, and $10 million going back to other organizations that support those groups, and $22.2 million to fund community programs that support seniors, disability groups, and African Nova Scotian Indigenous communities. What those are and who those groups are, and the dollars, if it's 100% restored, if it's partially restored. I haven't seen the actual breakdown yet. I don't know if it's been released yet, but we will certainly bring that along to you here. It's interesting that this comes on about an hour and a half, hour and three-quarters before a planned protest that was scheduled to happen at Province House today, with a number of these groups that were listed in this. We saw massive protest last week, right? And it wasn't just the groups, the disability groups and the seniors and the African Nova Scotians and Indigenous people. That one happening the day before. This one from the arts community. Now, I think that I said earlier that we need to celebrate the win, and I think we do. That the power of the people has been proven here in Nova Scotia, at least in this small part. But I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. The Premier needs to answer some questions about what the change was. And I said he was listening to the people, but was it the people in front of the legislature? Was it pressure from people emailing and calling their MLAs? Was it some of the blowback that he was hearing in his inner circles or his ministers were hearing? Right? And what about the other funding? Right, is this going to embolden even more the groups that have seen their funding cut? Right? If you've heard or listened to Nova Scotians about this segment, then what about the arts community or the culture community or the tourism offices that were closed or the job cuts that were coming? I would imagine those organizations will be pretty angry today. Happy to hear that those groups got their money back, but they're not getting theirs. So I would imagine that's probably going to spur further debate here in the community. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Tyler.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for squeezing me in.
Sure.
Is Sean Hannity going to be asking you to guest host for him when he needs some time off?
I doubt it.
Is that what's going on here?
It's funny, Tyler. I was during the break. You can imagine the amount of emails that I get every day, and it wasn't. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago that
the dumbest one. Is that what you did?
No, and I think a couple of weeks ago somebody shot me an email and said that I was bought off, and all I do is spew liberal crap on the airwaves because I'm emboldened to the Prime Minister.
You take it from all comers, don't you?
I do. That's part of the job, Tyler.
Yeah. Well, that means that you're doing a good job, doesn't it?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's one of those things. But the comments about Mark Carney, and he sure does travel a lot, and I don't blame him. If I had the Canadian Air Force at my beck and call, I'd be flying around too. But what is he accomplishing? It seems more than anything that he's going cap in hand to all these countries. I mean, would you think that maybe some of them would be coming to us? But I think that he just there's a reluctance to be in Ottawa because you would be held to account more often. I mean, I looked at his junket there from last week. I mean, every week it's a new trip, but he was sitting in this friendly little conference, if you will, and there was a Q&A with a very friendly audience, and there was a question that he didn't want to answer, so he made his reply was, well, let me make an adjacent point. So let me not answer the question, and I'll dance around it in another way. And the audience laughed, and that is really Mark Carney's kind of happy place, isn't it? Is away from the scrutiny and away from the bright lights. And so he canceled a number of days during his campaign during the election campaign, where he just simply hid under the bed. He's canceled a number of press conferences, including during this last trip. At last minute, I'm starting to lose track of how many times he's done that. And he's in Ottawa. He doesn't show up in question period. This has nothing to do with travel. I mean, we're hearing some of the callers making excuses for him because they're liberals, they're partisans. But he had the opportunity to join in on that debate, and he chose not to. So, I mean, if that's what you want from your prime minister, a guy who hides under the bed whenever it's convenient, then I guess that makes you a liberal. Thanks so much, Dan.
Appreciate it, Tyler. Have a good one.
Take care, buddy.
And I appreciate all the calls and the emails today, folks. I really and truly do. I guess in closing, before we go to the news break here, I wonder what the Prime Minister concerns were for not going into that emergency debate last night. The Liberal position, at least the first stated Liberal position on the war in Iran, and that of the Conservative Party, I mean, the Conservative Party has a stronger stance, but they were pretty close. So I understand that Mr. Carney is a businessman. I understand that Mr. Carney was not a politician. He's a politician now. And maybe question period is not his cup of tea, but it again, and I go back to this point. I wanted to hear what Canada's plans were militarily with this war, and I didn't want to hear it from the defense minister. I wanted to hear it from Mark Carney. We'll continue the debate tomorrow. Of course, tomorrow is Wednesday. That means that we're going to shift the open hour to noon to make room for house calls. I hope that you join the conversation. I truly do appreciate it. Time for that break. When we come back, we're going to switch things up on you. We're not going to talk about the science of politics because, oh boy, I don't think Dr. Rob has the right degrees for that one. But we are going to talk about science, and we're going to dig into what's going on in the world of science. And if you have a science-related question, he's here to answer it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files with Dr. Rob Thacker after the news. Well, welcome back. It's been a Tuesday, let's just say, and of course it isn't a Tuesday. It's not complete until we open up the telephone lines and open up the studio door here and welcome into the studio from St. Mary's University, Dr. Rob Thacker. It's time for Science Files. Dr. Rob, hello.
Hello there.
How are things?
Pretty good. Just back from a weekend in PEI at a conference, the Atlantic University's Physics and Astronomy Conference, which is an undergraduate conference. Had some great presentations. One of our students, Mackenzie, did really, really well, placed second overall.
Nice. So it was a competition kind of thing?
Yeah, so there's awards for student presentations, who does the best presentation. So I will say Mackenzie's presentation was absolutely awesome, talking about detections of intermediate mass black holes.
Oh, there you go. You're right in that's your ballywick, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, so anyway, that was a really good weekend. Lots of people there. People from Memorial were there out in Newfoundland, as well as people from New Brunswick, other Nova Scotia universities, and of course UPEI.
Do you all sit together at those conferences, Dr. Rob, and in the sidelines and in the off times, like when we go to radio conferences, we go around and we talk about bits and different show ideas and everything else. Do y'all go sit around and talk about string theory and particle physics?
No, we all sit around and complain about the lack of funding. Which sadly is a little bit true, but no. We talk about other things as well. I mean, we had a great dinner conversation about applications of physics in biophysics, right? And all of the stuff about learning about how collagen works and things like collagen is literally like a rope, right? And so that was fun. Yeah.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number if you want to get your question into Dr. Thacker. We're going to start in the email bag. Dr. Thacker, the email's been busy today.
Okay.
I can't figure out why, but it's been busy. Anyway, and this says, hello, everybody. A month ago, Dr. Thacker recommended Amazon Prime sci-fi series The Expanse,
yep,
which I watched all 6 seasons, finishing last night. Is there another similar series he can recommend? I've watched all the Star Trek and spin-off series, including The X-Files.
Oh, wow. So I was going to say it's Strange New Worlds, because I think that's actually pretty good too. I haven't been a huge fan of every single Star Trek show, but I think Strange New Worlds is well done. So no, off the top of my head, I don't have another good recommendation. I mean, it's so ironic because literally I was talking to one of my students about favorite sci-fi shows, saying The Expanse is my favorite, and the student was saying the same thing. So no, coming up with a swing and a miss on that one, unfortunately.
We all watch science fiction. Well, most of us watch science fiction movies, Dr. Rob, and we know. There's
sorry.
one. Bing, the light just went off.
This did sort of come up that. If you haven't seen the movie 2001, you really, really should watch the movie 2001. Because it's absolutely incredible, given that this was made in 1969.
Right.
And it's still, in terms of the subject matter that it covers. Now, admittedly, it feels very, very slow compared to a modern movie pacing. But it is absolutely mind-blowing in that context. So if you haven't seen that, it's not a series, I know, but if you haven't seen 2001, you probably have if you're a Trek fan and so on, but it is such an amazing movie. My all-time favorite movie.
Dr. Rob, how closely, and this is a broad question, how closely does science fiction mirror what's happening in the scientific community? Do you all watch the new sci-fi films that come off and you say, hey, that's interesting, maybe we should look at that?
So you won't be surprised that, yes, many physicists and astronomers are fans of science fiction. That's not a big surprise. There's a lot of overlap there. Where things get interesting is how individuals are prepared to sort of, that's taking my brain out and putting it on the side, right? How much people can do that and how much people get sort of like annoyed it did this and it shouldn't have done that. And so in general, anyone who has a sort of like creative bent and is interested in their own sort of writing as well, which there are actually a few colleagues who write short stories, right? Science fiction short stories. So those people are quite happy to literally suspend their belief and just watch and see how the story is put together and so on and have fun with that. There's a few other people I know who are less prepared to do that and will go to social media about, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong, and so on. I'm kind of in the middle, right? That if it's a good story, I can watch something that's a great story, even if they get a few things wrong. But if it gets really, really wrong, like the thing that really got me, and actually I'm teaching this right now to first years, is the Pixar movie, Lightyear. Buzz Lightyear.
Yes.
And so they have in that a piece of relativity called the twin paradox, that Buzz goes and zips around the sun and comes back again. And the concept is real. Right, there is something called the twin paradox that involves it's basically if you go away, change your direction and come back, then you will have aged less than the person who stays at home. That's part of relativity, as long as you're going very, very fast, I should say. And so they do this for Buzz, but he just goes around the nearest star. And if he goes around the nearest star, it wouldn't happen. You'd have to go around the star 33,000 times to get the same difference in time that was represented in the movie. So when that happened, I was like, this is really bad. And I literally put as a question in the homework, what's the movie got wrong for the students? Right. And so anyway, because the week before I said, find a movie that has a good representation of the theory of relativity in it.
There you go. It's science, practical science. Dr. Rob, technology that shows up in science fiction movies and in science fiction television shows, not necessarily spawning the creation of said devices, but I would imagine would be inspiration for. I mean, the very first time that I saw a flip phone, I thought, hey, that looks like a communicator.
Yeah, no. So to give credit for where this has been pushed in the popular vernacular, I mean, Bill Shatner has actually done TV shows on this, talking about how Star Trek has influenced design of things, and I think that's actually fair. Right, I tend to agree that a flip phone really does look like a communicator. I had a friend who literally programmed it to go as it opens up. So there is that element of inspiration, and that tends to flow through quite a number of people who I know go into biophysics and medical physics. Right, they tend to be thinking about, we really want to be able to create that scanner or something like that, which, no, we can't do quite yet, with the exceptions of things like MRIs and X-rays and so on. But we don't have good portable ones yet. But people are working on that, actively working on that. So yes, those things do filter through into people's, how can I say, it's from their imaginations to their professional desires.
Draw inspiration from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I got to ask you about the climate because we're looking at perhaps a record-breaking day today. You obviously keep a close eye on what's going on with climate change.
Yep.
Is swings like we're seeing here from week to week and day to day, particularly early on in spring, is that a result of a changing climate, or is that just positioning of jet streams and
so exactly.
patterns?
I mean, I was going to just come back with the usual thing, which is with the breakup of the jet stream making bigger wobbles, then inevitably, if that's the case, you're going to have systems pulled down from up north and then systems pulled up from the south. And so that just leads to a lot of variation in weather. I mean, what is the high we're supposed to experience? 14. I mean, let's remember, we did have a year, probably 8 or 9 years ago, when it hit 23 in March. And I remember people literally going down to Crystal Crescent to just literally take a picture of themselves sunbathing at Crystal Crescent in March.
Right.
And that was 23 degrees.
Yeah.
Which was a lot more insane than 14 degrees.
For sure.
Yeah.
But still, I'll take 14 any day of the week.
Well, I will certainly take this as long as we don't have another dump of snow. Right? It's the 10th of March, so yeah, we probably got another dump of snow coming somewhere.
Sheila's brush.
Yes.
It's the storm that everybody talks about around St. Patrick's Day. There's always going to be a storm.
Yeah, no, seriously, because once it gets warmer, then you can have more moisture in the air.
Right.
So all it takes is a cold front in, and boom, choom, there's a whole bunch of snow that comes.
The good thing is that it doesn't stick around long because the ground's already warmed up.
Yep.
We were talking about bubbles and troubles with tribbles here on this edition of the Todd Veinotte Show and Science Files. We're going to take our first break. Lines are open, folks. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. Had some time to think about it, and he's come up with yet another recommendation as we continue down the sci-fi realm, but this one into the television world, Rob.
Yeah, so I was trying to think of what my favorite science fiction TV series was before The Expanse, and I like Trek, don't get me wrong, but the thing that really, and this is quite a long time ago now, this is in the 90s, but the thing that really sort of had my imagination before The Expanse was Babylon 5. Right. And so there's been a lot of issues with them trying to do a rework of it, but that's never quite got off the ground. But now the episodes are available freely on YouTube.
Right.
Right. So I really enjoyed that. That was probably the first big space opera to really have a strong story arc. And that was really great. I mean, all credit to the creators. I was absolutely enthralled with that and watching it all the way to the very end.
You said you're a fan of the Trek, Dr. Rob, and when you have a fan of the Trek in the studio, you have to ask which series series was the best one for you?
I try not to have the religious battle over that, so
because it's a no-win situation.
But for me, it's like two very different things, right? So let me explain. And so growing up, I saw original series, right, and I watched that, and yeah, that was really something that blew my mind. And then Next Gen came out when I was at university. And the incredible thing was it came out and it was just available in North America first. It wasn't actually taken over to the UK. So my friend who had a friend in North America would get sent tapes of it. And so we watched it and we were like, oh, we're watching this thing that's only available in Canada and the US.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is really cool. And so it was kind of a thing to watch it then. And so, yeah, I became a really, really big fan, but for entirely different reasons. That there was almost this sort of I don't know, this real thrill of watching something that was so important but only available in America at the time. And so I got a very different experience out of the two of them. I will say that I just loved the episodes with the Borg. That was yeah, I get it. And how they expanded that philosophically as well was really interesting too.
Deep Space Nine was mine.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, that was great. Deep Space Nine was great.
It was a departure from the bridge. Based Star Trek and explored some different things and different sort of encounters. I mean, it's
really strong characterizations as well,
right?
In DS9,
and it's I've been to Quarks. There used to be a Quarks in Las Vegas, actually. Anyway, we're off the topic now.
Gold press platinum.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's go to the phones and say hello to Joe. Joe, how are you?
Hey, Dan.
Your question for Dr. Rob, please. Man? Good, I'm well. Your question, please.
Good. Hey, Dr. Rob.
Hey.
Dr. Thacker, I guess I should.
That's okay.
Probably...
Dr. Rob works too.
Right on. Dr. Rob, I just went down to, we've had a discussion before about plastics and microplastics.
Yep.
And now I'm learning more about nanoplastics. But I just walked into the corner store and I'm wondering, is BPE, if I buy a can of beer, is that a potential thing that I'm going to be ingesting?
Are you thinking BPB or BPA?
BPA, I think, yeah.
Is it BPA?
Yeah.
Whatever's in cans, like the lining that's in cans, like it's. I'm not sure. I'm
actually not sure off the top of my head what the lining inside beer cans is. So, I mean, traditionally, okay, I've very, very quickly looked it up. So traditionally, many companies were using BPA, but they're shifting towards a safer material, right? A polyester-based material. So that is happening. But yes, you are in the right headspace if you're concerned about BPA, for sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it was an estrogen mimicker. So we are moving away from that quite rapidly, actually.
There was a big discussion about that earlier on.
Yeah.
In plastic, in water bottles, and those kind of things that the plastic was leaking, and there was a big movement to get that out of like containers and devices. Right?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the challenges is, and so Joe kind of hinted at this, like talking about nanoplastics, is the fundamental problem with plastics is you can make them smaller, you can grind them up finer, but they're not going away because there are very, very few things in nature that will actually break them down. Right. And that is the fundamental challenge. Now, we're working our asses off. Right. Scientists really are trying to come up with basically enzymes that will break down the plastics more quickly. But we're not there yet. And plus, you've got to have the plastic there to break it down. If you're sticking a bunch of plastic into a river that's flowing out into the sea and then winds up in the ocean, then no, you're not going to be able to get your hands on that plastic to break it down. So there's a lot of, I think, pressure on us, quite literally, to use less plastic.
Right, and we know that it's thanks for the question, Joe, by the way. It's a massive problem. There are floating islands of plastics in the oceans around the world that are growing just about by the day.
Yeah, I mean, so I will say that how that was. It's a really okay. I'm a scientist. I have to get to, so when you see the pictures on social media of the like, oh, this is the plastic distribution in the Gaia. That's probably just a really small floating area that they found and taken a picture of. What they really mean is there is a higher concentration of plastics within the center of the ocean Gaia, which is a swirling current that keeps the plastic where it is.
Right.
But it doesn't look like usually a giant sea of plastic covering the surface of the ocean. It doesn't actually look like that. Now, where you will see that is illegal dumping by cruise ships. Then you will see these giant plastic islands of crap, literally, floating across the ocean. And anyone who has been to the Western Caribbean will know that many of the beaches, for example, the beaches in Belize, and I've seen this with my own eyes.
Dominican Republic, too.
Yeah, get absolutely covered in plastic wash that's been illegally dumped in the Caribbean, and it's grim. It's absolutely grim. You can have literally feet of this stuff on beaches. It's shocking.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Rob, I know we've been working on plastic probably since plastic was invented. Are we making any headway on finding a suitable replacement for it? Because, I mean, plastic is just about everywhere.
So one of the challenges with it is plastic, because it's become so industrial processed, is incredibly cheap, comparatively speaking. So everything else that we would think of to replace it with, like, for example, wood, bamboo, paper, while those things are handled industrially, they're not created at the same level as plastics are. And that's the economic problem. Like, many of you who are prepared to sort of like buy a TV dinner will know that there are some brands that will give you it in a biodegradable container, right, that you can literally throw in the trash and not feel bad about throwing a piece of plastic in the trash. But those are inevitably almost twice the price. Right. Now, I don't know if there's a gouge there, but I suspect it's not entirely a gouge because people want to be able to sell product, right? So there must be an additional expense in there compared to just having the plastic container.
I mean, the clamshells. And I mean, no matter where you go, we had a movement here in Nova Scotia, the government banning plastic shopping bags, right? Which I'm assuming will help the problem. But if you just take a walk through just in the produce section of a supermarket, you just see how much plastic we're using on everything.
That is, yeah. No, I mean, I know what you're talking about there. And so that's frustrating because if you go back, it's not like society hasn't been able to work in a situation where we don't have all of this packaging around for tomatoes, right? We have lived in that world. I think we can go back to that world, right? If it's a shipping issue, then just solve the bulk shipping issue, right? And that, I don't know. I mean, there are people who are going to say, well, everything's mechanized and so on, so it's you're going to pay for it, right? But, I mean, we're going to have to pay for it anyway because we're destroying the planet with plastic.
And, I mean, we have to do it. I get it that the grocery store, and I'm picking on grocery stores, but we go to the grocery store and you're talking about tomatoes, and there are bulk tomatoes in bins in the grocery store already, right? And then there's tomatoes right next to them that are in the clamshell. So we obviously have a way to get these things to the store in maybe a larger plastic container, but like one container instead of 75 containers.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's the ultimate limit of this is what you sometimes see in Japan, which is where things are individually wrapped, which is just a bit insane, right? So no, I mean, we should be able to go back to this, and I think we slowly are. I think there's a lot less plastic now in vegetable displays than there used to be. But even so, the things that I particularly like I love cherry tomatoes, right? And I don't think I can buy loose cherry tomatoes.
They're all in the clamshell, right?
Yeah, exactly.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files with Dr. Rob Thacker continues after the update. Welcome back. It is Science Files. He is Dr. Rob Thacker, all the way from St. Mary's University, here in the studio today, and he's here to answer your science-related questions. Should you have a question for Dr. Thacker, the lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We welcome David to the show with a question that was burning on the minds of our callers on Friday. Hello, David.
Yeah, I know it's probably been asked, and I'm sure I missed that one. But yeah, first I have to agree. I think Deep Space Nine of all the Treks really stands out. Just the sort of story, the subject matter, that sort of the characters and the sort of performances put in by the various actors, including Nana Visitor, who played Kira Nerys. But I'd have to say too, I'm actually really enjoying the new Star Treks, and I've actually just sort of finished watching those. And Starfleet Academy wraps up this coming Thursday as well too, which I thought is a great show.
I haven't watched that. Is that worth
watching? It's actually very good. We're watching it.
Yeah,
okay.
It is. Yeah, and I mean, it's maybe I wouldn't say. Yeah, I mean, targeted for a younger audience, maybe that sort of 20-year-old audience or slightly younger or something. But hey, why not? They should have shows that they like to watch and deal with questions that they have and stuff. But no, even that being said, they're great. And the Deep Space Nine tribute episode in that one was actually really well done. Yep. And I was a little concerned about it. So okay. Anyway, standard time. My understanding just from hearing the discussion and stuff is that basically it's set whenever the sun is directly overhead at noon. And I'm just curious how that varies by season and then also in terms of location within a specific time zone. And if there is sort of a calibration point within each time zone where, the sort of parameters for high noon according to standard time hold perfectly true where, various other locations there might be some drift or something.
The Sanford Fleming experiment that was trying to keep the trains on time, right?
Yeah. So you don't have a perfectly circular orbit, right? So there's got to be this is the what do they call it? The analemma. I think there's a certain amount of drift, right? And you have to account for that, right? But I'm off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I'm not the best person to talk about this because I've never really thought about the precise synchronization. I mean, that's honestly why we had observatories, right, for timekeeping, right? People are always surprised that the government would build these observatories for very practical reasons. I mean, you go back to the beginning of the 1800s, I mean, people building observatories then were doing it for primarily for timekeeping, right? And so there's a long history of astronomers testing watches, if you believe it. And so the Omega, how do I know this? Because I'm a watch geek, but the Omega constellation watch.
I was looking at your wrist. I don't see an Omega on your wrist.
No. Good God, no. I mean, I don't have the money to have one of those things, right? But the Geneva Observatory used to actually certify watches for their chronology. But anyway, sorry, coming back to it, that's off the top of my head. There has to be a slight drift, right? And so how you would precisely calibrate that, I don't know off the top of my head how that was done.
The legend is, and I appreciate the call, David, the legend is that Sanford Fleming built the railways, obviously, has the dingle here in Halifax. Yep. And devised this the standard time zone so that the trains would be able to stay on time. So that's the theory behind it. I didn't know, and I've no doubt that David's correct that they based each of there's Eastern time zone and Central time zone and Atlantic time zone, that they based it on high noon, and it would be interesting to dig into sort of the calibration on that, because I mean, the sun's moving. It moves 3 minutes a day, right?
So I'm sure that actually my colleagues know about this in precise detail. Well, certainly my colleague David Turner knows about this in detail, but it's not something that I've ever looked at. So, actually, now I want to know. So
there you go. Rob's going to go home and do homework.
So yeah. I mean, you can always you can calibrate depending upon where you put the time zone, but then obviously, if the planet isn't on a perfectly circular orbit, then there would be a slight shift with time.
Speaking of time, Dr. Rob, we sprung forward this past weekend.
Yeah.
We entered, I do believe it's daylight saving time.
Oh, this is the daylight savings time argument?
Yes.
Okay.
And my argument that
Let's go there.
This is a process that we really don't even need to do anymore. I mean, your thoughts on daylight saving time, and is it worth the effort of trying to figure out how to reset that clock in your kitchen?
It entirely depends upon who you are and where your income comes from.
Right.
So if you are someone who gets income from tourism, then you probably want daylight savings time.
Right.
Right. So I get it. But in terms of the actual impact it has, in terms of the number of lost hours of work and so on, measured across the whole economy, it's probably we're better off not having it. Right. So I don't know what to say. It was a little bit fun coming in at the beginning of the week because I teach very early on a Monday. And so coming in after the clocks changed, we were coming in with the crows.
Yes.
Right? Which was kind of neat.
The Mount St. Vincent crows.
Well, yeah. So from the big roost.
Yes.
And so that was kind of fun. But no, personally, I would rather we didn't have daylight savings time. So I don't think I've made much of a secret of that. And
does it mess up when you're doing like when you guys are using your observatories and your observations of the night sky? Does it mess it up when you're switching hours back and forth twice a year?
I mean, so how does our queue? I'm honestly trying to think about how our queue would handle it. I mean, it all depends whether we have cloud or not.
Right.
Right. So if we're not observing, it really doesn't make any difference.
Right.
Right. But presumably the queue, I don't know. It depends upon how the software is written, to be honest. But I wouldn't think that's a big deal at the end of the day, because once an observation is done, it's recorded when it is done. So that would be the thing that's doing. The queue just is the queue, right? It doesn't matter what the time is. There's this many things that have to get done.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Cheryl.
Hi, how are you, Dr. Rob and Dan?
We are
Great.
well. What's on your mind?
Well, on the weekend, I was listening to my podcast, Alan Cross, The Ongoing History of New Music, and he was talking in detail about Tom DeLonge, who's the co-founder and vocalist for Blink-182, and how he has done so much in space-related research. And he's written several books like Secret Machines. I was just wanted to get Dr. Rob's take on Tom DeLonge and what I should read, if I should read anything on his, his science.
So,
adventures.
Okay, it's funny. I mean, you could have talked about a musician who's done a lot of science, and I would have known something about it, and that would be Brian May of Queen.
Right.
So Brian actually got his PhD. He finished that off a few years ago, actually. But Tom DeLonge, I've actually had to Google, and it's come up with he's interested in UFO and UAP stuff. So I've honestly got to be have my foot in the skeptical camp, but without reading what this person has particularly written, I wouldn't be able to give you an assessment straight off the top of my head. But how can I put it? My spidey sense is tingling.
Thanks, Cheryl. Appreciate the call. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Brian May is an astrophysicist, is he not?
He is indeed, yeah.
So he's in a similar field as to you.
Yeah. So Brian actually was doing his PhD when Queen got going, right? And so he ended up really wanting to finish it after, obviously, Queen kind of peaked. Freddie Mercury passed away. And so he did then come back and actually finish it off, which is really impressive, actually. I would say that. Although it's kind of amazing to be able to be in a field where things haven't changed so much in 25 years that what you were doing hasn't changed. I mean, I'm sure it had changed in some ways. But anyway, so yes, he came back. I think I'm trying to remember what he was doing research on. I think it was something in stars. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, so he's been a great supporter of astronomy in the UK. I think he's appeared on the UK Sky at Night fairly regularly.
So do all astrophysicists play guitar like Brian May does? Probably
Oh,
not, eh?
if only. If only. No, we don't.
I think-
Some of us are musical klutzes like me.
Yeah, and me as well. I will say, though, that I can't play, but I certainly listen. And I will suggest that when we're talking about some of the greatest to ever use the instrument, that Brian's name gets left off that list a lot. And I think that he is underrated for what he's accomplished as a musician.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, if you look at the musical history of Queen, I would argue that he was never, ever going to outshine Freddie Mercury.
No.
So it's not really surprising.
Right.
Right. And so, you can just see it. Regardless of how good his own solos may have been, everyone was there to watch Freddie.
And listen to Freddie.
Yeah.
Because Freddie was a spectacle.
Yeah.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That's the number if you have a question for Dr. Rob. This is Science Files, and it will continue right after this break. All right, Science Files continues right to the top of the hour, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Rob Thacker in the house, and we'll go to the phones, and we will welcome Debbie to the program. Debbie, how are you?
Hi, Dan and Dr. Rob.
Your question, please.
Hi. This is my first time calling in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
For sure.
I think about this twice a year whenever we change the clocks. I heard you discussing changing the clocks before, so I thought this is a great time to ask my question. I've always wondered why, I guess we hear that data shows that after we change the clocks, there are always problems with more traffic accidents and cardiovascular issues in people and other health problems because of the way it affects our circadian rhythm. And yet I thought, how is that any different from when we willingly travel and have to go through time zones, and that should affect us the same way, and yet I don't hear the same outcry about that.
Yeah, no, this is a really good question, Debbie. Thank you for bringing it up online. So the thing to remember is everything you've talked about with what Dan has called jet lag is true, right? Whenever you travel somewhere and you go to a different time zone, then yes, you are going to have an experience that's going to shift your circadian rhythms, and it's not going to be great for you for at least 2 or 3 days, right? Totally, right?
Yes.
The main thing with having a daylight savings times change is you are forcing that on everyone in the province at the same time, right? And it's that accumulated large number of exposures all happening at the same time that is the primary issue, right? So literally, instead of like someone getting on a plane and going somewhere, you're literally putting everyone in the province in the same situation.
Right. When you travel, you're just a drop in the bucket, whereas when we change it here, the whole bucket gets changed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. So statistically, that's going to make everything jump up at a huge level, right? From like literally maybe, I have no idea what the total population away at any one time is. It's probably 1 or 2% or something like that, right? More in the summer perhaps. So, but now you're just doing 100%, boom, just like that.
Right. Okay. So I understand statistically why that would show in the data, but I guess, see, personally, I don't mind the time change. I just like to have the lighter days always in the evening. The lighter hours always in the evening. So I guess I just wonder why people, if they say it bothers them twice a year to change clocks, and yet they're willing to travel through time zones and not have it bother them that way. But I understand statistically throughout the whole that it affects the whole population that way, right? Okay.
Thanks, Debbie. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I don't know if it's just because it was a weekend, but obviously as the spring forward has changed the daylight in my morning commute.
Yep. Yeah, it's darker now.
And I've found for the last 2 days that I've had trouble kind of getting the motor going, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's quite interesting. I happened to be away when, the time zone changed, and so I wasn't sleeping particularly well. And so when I woke up on Sunday, I'm like, "What's the time?" Okay, I looked at my watch, which of course changed already, right? And then I was like, "Okay, I'll just get up, no problem." And so it felt completely normal on Sunday, and then on Monday morning when I woke up, I was like, "Oh, I'm really tired." Right, and I had to get up early on Monday morning as well to teach an 8:30 class. So So, yeah, it can impact you differently depending upon what both your mindset is about it as well, right?
Mentioned jet lag, Dr. Rob. I know that you travel to the UK quite frequently, and that's always been my example of jet lag when we leave here, and it's and depending on the if we're in daylight saving time or not, or both countries are, it can be anywhere from 3 to 4 hours difference in the UK, at least where I go. And that one always hurts. Can you defeat jet lag, or do you have to deal with it?
No, you have to deal with it. So there are different ways you can deal with it. So what I tend to do is to try and do a very, very, very long day, right? So I'm a total mess when I arrive because I've been trying to stay awake for a long time. And then I'll take melatonin pills and then try and sleep to get everything back in the right time zone. And that generally for me works reasonably well. I do also try and one of the things you can do is to get out in the sun, right? Once you get there, that helps as well, right? And so generally, yeah, I try and get myself so exhausted to the point where I sleep and I recover and then I'm fairly good to go. But what I don't do is get there, rent a car and start driving on the left-hand side straight away. No. I don't do that. Yeah.
First time I saw that, it was bonkers.
Yeah, no, I literally
the traffic circles or the roundabouts go the different direction. Mm-hmm. So when I literally got off the train, I know we're going off topic here. When I got off the train, I landed at Gatwick Airport, took the train and got off the train and walked out of the train station into a traffic circle. After being through most of the flights out of here.
Were you looking in the right direction?
No.
Yeah.
And it was a red-eye flight, right?
Yep.
So I got there and I'm getting ready to walk out into the traffic, and everything was going the other way. It was wild.
Seriously. I mean, so we went to Scotland last summer, and so for the very first week, we decided that we wouldn't drive around just to get used to it.
Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here, Dr. Rob, before we run out of time, and we'll say hello to Brian. Brian, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Your question, please.
Good. I'll try to keep this quick. I was going to call over the holidays. I didn't really get to it, but with summer coming up, it's reared its ugly head again, and I have a 10-year-old who's incredibly interested in space.
Okay.
And we have access to a very nice light area up on the North Shore, and I'm wondering if you have any affordable telescopes you would recommend.
Yeah, so if you've got a 10-year-old, this makes it a little bit more tricky because my first reaction is always to say binoculars because binoculars show you everything the right way up, okay?
We have binoculars now, and we're beyond that now. He wants a telescope.
Okay. So one of the things I'm going to say, and this is like completely honest, is that visually, a telescope will only help a bit, right? If you get a fairly good one, most of the time, there's something called a Dobsonian telescope, which has a large mirror. But the challenge with any kind of telescope is once you put any kind of magnification on it, you need to have motors that will move it. Okay?
Right.
And that's what makes it somewhat difficult to use a telescope compared to binoculars, which inevitably, unless you have a tripod, you're doing by hand. So I would tend to say looking for a 6-inch Dobsonian telescope is probably a reasonable way to get going, but they're not easy to use, right? So here's my recommendation. Okay. My good friends at the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, right, the RASC, have a whole bunch of people who are more than willing to help you work through learning how to use a telescope, because you literally do have to learn how to use it properly, right? Because the first time you're looking through it and you realize that going up and down, actually it's going in the opposite direction from what you think, can take some getting used to. And you've also got to be able to do what's called sky navigation to figure your way to see the thing you want to see. It's not like using a pair of binocs where you literally know where you're pointing. It's more difficult than that. So I totally recommend, if you have the time, just spending a Saturday going down to one of the meetings of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada in the Halifax Centre. I don't know where you are. Sorry, if you're outside of Halifax, I apologize. But that's a really good way just to get to see how to use a telescope. They take a little bit of time to work your way around them.
Brian, I appreciate it, and best of luck. I hope that your youngster enjoys the experience. I think the best part for me, and I'm certainly an amateur when it comes on binoculars, but the best experience for me is just being out there.
Yeah, so there is one experience of looking through a telescope that pretty much anyone who sees it for the first time is blown away by it, and that experience is seeing Saturn right through a telescope. Because once you see Saturn through a telescope and you see that point in the sky has some rings, that's just awesome, right? That is an experience that really, once you have it, you're like, wow, I want another thing like that, and it's really hard to match it.
And then the obsession with toys begins, much like our photography obsession, right?
Yeah,
it's glass after glass.
Funnily enough, I mean, I have binoculars as well, although I have very, very good astro binoculars, very expensive astro binoculars, but I still prefer those over a telescope. In fact, I gave my telescope away to someone. So I'm a big believer in binoculars just because they're easy to use.
Dr. Rob, is always a pleasure. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks very much, everyone, for the great questions.
That is Dr. Rob Thacker. He's here every Tuesday from 12 until 1 to answer your science-related questions, and he's going to go home and hope for clear skies so that he can go play with his binoculars. Thanks to all of our guests who joined the show today and shared their stories with us and imparted their knowledge. I truly appreciate it. I learned something every day that we do this show. Thanks to all of you for picking up the telephone, or the keyboard in this case, and sending us your thoughts during the open hour and during this last segment with Dr. Rob. I truly appreciate it when you do that each and every time that you do. Tomorrow is the Wednesday edition of the show. Of course, we're going to move the open hour to noon to make way for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. Dr. John will be here to answer your questions after 11 o'clock tomorrow, and I hope to hear from you then. Until then, everybody, 14 degrees today. For goodness sakes, as the gamers say, get outside and touch some grass. We haven't seen it for a long time. Be a great day to do that. My thanks to Vanessa Vananez on the other side of the glass. Outstanding work. Be well, everybody, and remember, it's important. Be kind to one another.